I was 24, and honestly, pretty adrift. I'd dropped out of college and was living in a small apartment above a bakery, mostly working nights to avoid everyone I knew. It wasn't a glamorous life, but the flexible hours of driving people around were perfect for someone who didn't really have a plan. I'd been doing it for almost 3 years, and it mostly involved quiet rides and awkward small talk. The chipped formica of the bakery counter was still warm when I grabbed a black coffee and a bear claw. Stella was already wiping down the display case, even though it wasn't 6 a.m. yet. She just always was. "Slow night?" she asked, not looking up. "Quiet," I said, which was good. Quiet meant more tips, less everything. I checked the app. A Lyle Henderson requesting pickup 3 blocks over. Standard. He was waiting on the corner, bundled in a ridiculous orange parka. He looked like a carrot. He gave me a tight little nod when I pulled up. The ride request was for the industrial park on the edge of town, which wasn't unusual. Lots of early shift workers needed rides, but he asked me to drop him at the back entrance, near the loading docks. He said he didn't want to bother anyone. I didn't push it. He barely spoke the whole way. He just stared straight ahead, hands well. They were doing that thing again. Not the full-on jerky movements from the other night, but a constant subtle flexing of the fingers, like he was playing an invisible piano. It was distracting. I tried to focus on the radio, some oldie station, but it didn't help. I kept glancing in the rear view, trying to figure out if it was a medical thing, maybe a tremor, or some kind of tic. He paid in cash, exact change. As he got out, he paused and said, "You always take Elm Street, don't you?" It caught me off guard. "Usually," I said. "It's the quickest way." He just nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. "Right." And then he was gone, swallowed by the pre-dawn gloom of the loading docks. I thought maybe he was just making conversation, trying to be friendly. Or maybe he'd been watching my route on the app. People do that. I felt a little creeped out, but mostly I figured he was just a weirdo. It wasn't like it was the first weirdo I'd driven. Still, I took Maple on the way back, just in case. I kept to main roads after that. I stuck to the streets with streetlights. Even if it added 10 minutes to the fare, it felt stupid admitting it. But I didn't want another guy like Lyle getting in my car. I started checking the passenger profiles more carefully too. Little pictures, the star ratings, it didn't really mean anything, but it felt like something. Then came Ada. She wanted to go to the industrial park. Not one of the businesses though, just the back entrance, near the rail line. I almost canceled. It was well past midnight, and that place is practically deserted, but it was a long ride, and the money was good. She didn't say much, just looked out the window, but as we got closer, she asked, "Do you usually come down Elm Street?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't mentioned that to anyone. Lyle hadn't even known I'd avoided it. "No," I said, a little too quickly. "Not usually." "Just wondering," she said, and that was it. She didn't push, but when we got to the gate, she paid, and I noticed something taped to the inside of the passenger door. A small square piece of blue painter's tape, like someone had marked the car. I peeled it off, feeling exposed, like I was being tagged. It had to be kids, right? Some kind of prank. I drove straight to the bakery. Helen was already inside, flour dusting her apron. She always got in early. "Long night?" she asked, handing me a day-old croissant. You could say that. I didn't tell her about Ada, or Lyle, or the tape. It sounded crazy, even to me, but I asked her if she'd seen anyone hanging around the loading docks lately. She frowned. "Old man Pell sometimes walks his dog back there." "Why?" Pell? That name didn't ring a bell, but it felt connected, like a missing piece of something I couldn't quite see. I started wondering if maybe this wasn't random. Maybe someone was deliberately messing with me. Maybe it was someone who knew Helen and was using her to, I don't know, watch me. I kept checking my rearview mirror. Not for cars exactly, but for something else. It was stupid, I know, but after the blue tape and Helen asking about the loading dock and now Pell's name floating around, I couldn't shake it. I picked up a fare, a guy named Lyle, heading out towards the old quarry road. He didn't say much, just asked me to stop at Bia's diner, which is far out of my way. But what can you do? Bia's is quiet, mostly truckers and people avoiding town. When we pulled up, I noticed a beat-up pickup truck I'd seen before. It was parked across the street, facing away. I didn't think much of it at the time, figuring it was just someone grabbing a bite. Lyle got his coffee, came back, and asked me to take him not to his destination, but back towards Elm Street, specifically the dead end. "Just need to check something," he mumbled when I questioned it. Elm Street, I avoided that road for a reason. It felt wrong. He directed me to pull over halfway down, near that overgrown lot where old man Ruben used to keep bees. As I stopped, the pickup from Bees pulled up behind me. Slow, too slow. Lyle got out, didn't even pay. He just walked towards the lot. Then he started digging, with his bare hands. And the guys in the pickup, they just sat there watching. It felt like a setup. Like I was supposed to be a witness to something. A really messed up something. I threw the car in gear, flooring it. I didn't even think. I just had to get away. I glanced in the mirror. The pickup started moving, but slow again, letting me go. I drove straight to the bakery, my heart hammering. Helen wasn't there. Ada was wiping down the counter, looking calm. Too calm. I think honestly, I thought it was some kind of weird, local prank escalating out of control. Some twisted initiation or something. Just boys being boys, but darker. Ada barely looked up when I told her about Lyle, the diner, the truck. She just kept wiping the counter, slow circles. "People do strange things out here," she said finally. Like that explained it. I asked about the truck, if she recognized it. She said she'd seen it around, sometimes near the quarry road. "Ruben drives a pickup," she offered, like that was supposed to what? Comfort me? Ruben? I'd never even heard her mention a Ruben. I needed someone to take me seriously. I drove to the station, hoping Sheriff Hal would be there. He wasn't there. A younger deputy, Vito, was at the front desk. I laid it all out. Lyle, the stops, the feeling of being watched. Vito listened, nodding, but his eyes kept drifting to the coffee pot. He took my information, said he'd keep an eye out. It felt hollow. I drove back towards town, deciding to switch shifts. No more late nights. I'd stick to the daytime runs, maybe even request a different zone. As I passed the bakery, I saw Ada talking to a man in a dark suit, leaning into the window. She didn't look calm now, she looked intense. Then it hit me. The diner wasn't random. The quarry road, even the dead-end street. They were all on my usual route, the one I'd driven for months, and Ada, she knew. She'd been steering me towards these places, subtly. Maybe she was with Ruben. Maybe they were running some kind of delivery service, something illegal. I started thinking about all the times she'd casually ask about my schedule, about where I was planning to go. It was a relief in a way. A horrible relief. At least it wasn't something bigger. I didn't go home. I drove to Jules's place, asked if I could crash on his couch. He didn't ask why, just handed me a blanket. He works nights at the lumber yard, so he's always asleep when I start my shift. I felt safer for about 5 minutes. Then I remembered the small, smooth stone Lyle had picked up from the lot. It was on the passenger seat. I'd completely forgotten about it until now. And it wasn't a stone, it was a piece of slate. Identical to the roofing material at the lumber yard. It's been years. I don't even drive for the app anymore. Not since everything. People ask if I'm still jumpy, and I tell them no. That's a lie. It's not jumpy exactly. It's just calibrated differently. I kept thinking about the slate. Jules didn't recognize it, saying they get deliveries from a dozen suppliers. But it was the same stuff. And the more I thought about it, the more it felt like someone was testing me, seeing how far they could push before I noticed, or before I said something, to Vito, maybe, or to anyone. I tried to piece it together. It had to be a disgruntled customer. Someone I'd given a bad rating to, or refused a fare for, a guy with a grudge. It made sense in a twisted way, harassing me through these staged encounters. The seizure guy, the bakery, the lot, the quarry. It was all escalating, but still contained. Annoying, terrifying, but not violent. Not yet. I started logging every ride, every request, Every stop, I'd check license plates, run faces, nothing ever came up. And eventually, the requests started to thin. Then they stopped, just stopped. Now, I work at a hardware store. It's quiet and predictable, and I still do it. Every time someone new comes in, especially if they ask for roofing supplies, I watch them. Not obviously, just observe their hands, their eyes, the way they hold themselves. I memorize their car make and model if they parked out front. It's automatic. I don't even realize I'm doing it half the time until I catch myself cataloging the details. It's just what I do now. Just now, a woman in a blue sedan asked about sealant. I watched her. She was probably fine. Probably. I still remember the chipped formica of the kitchen counter, a pale yellow with tiny flecks of brown. It was the kind of detail you don't notice at the time, but it's stuck with me ever since. I was working pickups then, trying to save for school, and got a call for a ride out to a really big house on the edge of everything. She said she needed to get to the city, a last-minute thing, and I was happy for the long fare. It was a quiet season for requests. The highway was mostly empty, that stretch between Oak Haven and Bellbridge. Not a lot of requests go through there, usually. Mostly people heading to the casino, I guess, or trying to avoid the city. The guy, Tam, his name was, hadn't said much, just gave me the address and scrolled through his phone the whole ride. Polite enough, but distant. I checked the rear view again, still nothing behind me. I'd been doing that a lot, I realized. Probably just the long drive. And that thing, it was still there, tucked between the seats. That little wooden bird, my grandmother's. I hadn't seen it in years. It was always on the mantelpiece at her house. How did that get in my car? I'd vacuumed it out yesterday, thoroughly. I remembered thinking I should probably dust the dashboard too, but I hadn't gotten around to it. I started thinking maybe I'd absent-mindedly grabbed it when I was visiting my aunt last month. She'd cleared out Grandma's house after everything. Maybe I'd stuck it in my bag and forgotten about it. It felt flimsy, though. I would have noticed. Then Tam cleared his throat. "You all right?" "Yeah, fine," I said, a little too quickly. Just thinking. Long drive. It is. I glanced at the navigation. Still another 40 minutes. I decided to change the radio station. All static. That was weird. Usually I get a signal even out here. I tried a different station, more static. I fiddled with the antenna, but nothing. Just that crackling sound. Tam didn't seem to notice. He was back to staring at his phone, thumbs flying across the screen. I felt a prickle on the back of my neck. An unsettling feeling. Maybe someone was jamming the signal. Some kind of rural prank. Kids messing around with radio equipment. It felt targeted somehow. The static hadn't let up. Not for a second in the last 20 minutes. I tried my cell, just to check. No service. That wasn't normal either, even out here. Usually I get 1 or 2 bars. I glanced at Tam. He was still glued to his phone. He hadn't said a word since the initial address confirmation. I cleared my throat. "Radio's acting up," I said, keeping it casual, and no cell signal. Probably just a dead zone. He just hummed, didn't even look up. Then I realized something. The navigation hadn't recalculated since we passed Miller's Crossing 20 minutes ago. It just kept saying recalculating in that robotic voice. I tried to manually adjust the route to take the highway, but the screen froze. It was like the whole system had locked up. Okay, that was weird. Really weird. 2 systems failing at once? I started to sweat. I pulled over to the shoulder and killed the engine. "Something's wrong with the car," I said, finally getting Tam's attention. He looked up, his expression blank. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice flat. "Navigation's frozen, radio's dead, no cell signal. It's like something's blocking everything." I noticed a flash of movement in my rearview mirror. A dark pickup truck, maybe half a mile back. It was just passing, probably nothing. But I didn't want to be stuck here. I restarted the car, hoping it was just a glitch. The navigation still showed recalculating. I decided to ignore it and just keep following the highway. I figured maybe I could get a signal in the next town. As I pulled back onto the road, I saw the dark pickup again, closer this time. It was keeping pace with us. Maybe it was just going the same way, but it felt intentional, like it was making sure it didn't lose us. I sped up a little. So did the truck. I eased off the gas. It slowed down too. I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone was messing with me. Maybe Tam knew something. Maybe he'd hired someone to. I don't know, to intimidate me? It felt ridiculous, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I floored it. Just wanted to put some distance between us and that truck. The speedometer climbed, but so did the truck, matching me still. It wasn't speeding at me, just mirroring. It was unnerving. I risked a glance at Tam. He hadn't said a word since we left the diner, just stared out the window, looking paler with every mile. "You okay back there?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He mumbled something I couldn't catch. What was that? Nothing. He turned, and his eyes, they looked scared, but not of the truck. More like he knew something I didn't, which honestly was probably true. Up ahead, I saw it, a state patrol car parked on the shoulder. Relief washed over me. Finally, I slowed, signaling to pull over. Maybe they could run the plates on that truck, figure out what was going on. As I approached, the patrol car's lights stayed off. No movement, just sitting there. And then the truck started to pull alongside the patrol car, slowing to match its pace. The officer inside didn't react, didn't even look over. It was like they were coordinating. That's when I knew. This wasn't about Tam or me. This was something bigger, some kind of operation. Maybe Tam was involved in something illegal, and these guys were his backup, making sure I didn't say anything. That had to be it. I swerved hard right, onto a dirt access road I hadn't even registered before. It was bumpy and overgrown, but anything was better than staying on the highway. I glanced in the rear view. The truck didn't follow. It stayed alongside the patrol car, both of them just watching me disappear down the dirt road. I drove until the road dead-ended at a chain-link fence surrounding what looked like an abandoned farm. I killed the engine. Silence. Then a gate creaked open, not from my side, from the other side. The gate swung wider, enough for the car to pass. I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed at me to back up, to just drive anywhere. But the passenger, June, hadn't said a word since we turned off the highway. She just stared straight ahead, hands folded in her lap. I put the car in drive. The farm was worse up close. Not just abandoned, but stripped, like someone had gone through it systematically, taking everything useful. The house was a shell, windows gone, and the porch collapsing. We drove slowly down a lane choked with weeds, ending at a small, dilapidated barn. June finally spoke. "Stop here." I killed the engine again. What is this place? Just wait. I waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. She didn't move. I couldn't stand it. I got out and walked around the car. The barn door was slightly ajar inside. It was dark, smelling of dust and something else, metallic. I pushed the door open further. And that's when I saw them. Not people exactly. Monitors, rows and rows of them, flickering with static and what looked like maps, satellite images, and connecting all of it, a tangle of wires running to a generator humming in the corner. It was a surveillance station, a really sophisticated one. It hit me then. June wasn't running from someone. She was delivering something, information, to whoever was running this place. Maybe she was some kind of courier, and I'd just driven her right to them. I started to back away, to get back in the car, a voice behind me. "Looking for something, driver?" It was Fitch. He was leaning against the barn, arms crossed, a small smile on his face. He hadn't been following us. He'd been waiting. It's been years. I still drive, though not full-time. I couldn't after what happened. People ask if I reported it, if I went to the police. I did. Several times. Each time it felt pointless, like trying to explain a dream to someone who hadn't been there. They wanted names, dates, a clear motive. I had June and Fitch and that place, but the information felt borrowed, like I was relaying someone else's story badly. I stopped trying to piece it together. It was easier that way. Easier to tell myself it was some kind of elaborate smuggling operation. Maybe. June was the courier, the farm was a drop point, and I just happened to be the unwitting delivery service. It made a twisted kind of sense. It still does sometimes. The biggest change, though, wasn't the fear, it was the quiet. I used to love driving late shifts, just me and the road. Now I always have the radio on, even if it's static. I need a voice. Any voice. Nell started riding with me a lot. She's my sister. And I never really paid her much mind before. Always busy, always with her own life. Now I find myself checking in with her before every long run, telling her my route. Not because I think they're still out there, but because I want her to know. We were at the airport last week waiting for a pickup. It was a standard terminal, all glass and chrome, people rushing everywhere. I felt it then, that creeping sensation again, like I was being watched. Not specifically me, but observed, and I gripped Nell's arm for a second, and she didn't even flinch, she just squeezed back. And that's how it is now. Airports just sit wrong. It's strange revisiting this now. Honestly, life settled back into a routine pretty quickly after everything, and for a long time, I just didn't talk about it. I drove for another year, got a different job, moved apartments, all the usual things people do, but a friend mentioned something the other day that nudged it loose, and I realized I'd never actually written down what happened that night, just held onto the feeling of it. So, I'm trying to get it straight, mostly for myself, I guess. The chipped formica of the diner booth felt cool under my elbows. Another cup of coffee, black. They didn't skimp on the refills here, which was good. Long hauls and weak coffee don't mix. I was already planning the route for the next run, mostly Interstate 80 West, picking up a load of furniture in Omaha. Easy money. I glanced back at the woman, Greta, with the sugar. She hadn't stopped. The stacks were getting intricate. Little pyramids, then squares around them, then tiny walls. It wasn't just neat, it was obsessive, like a tiny white city rising from the tabletop. I tried to tell myself it was just a quirk. People have hobbies, right? Some people knit, some collect stamps. Maybe she was an architect, practicing miniature designs. It sounded reasonable. I even smiled a little, picturing her building skyscrapers out of sugar. But the way she didn't blink, the way her jaw was set, the complete and utter focus, it wasn't relaxing to watch. It was unsettling. Then her phone buzzed. She didn't look at it, didn't even pause her building, just kept meticulously placing the granules. It buzzed again, and again. Finally she reached over, still without looking, and swiped at the screen. A quick glance, then back to the sugar. She started dismantling one of the pyramids, carefully separating the grains. I couldn't help but watch. She finished, then gathered up the sugar with a napkin, dumping it back into the packet. She did it slowly, deliberately, as if performing a ritual. Then she looked up, and her eyes met mine. Not a glare, not hostile, just assessing. She gave me a small, tight smile, and I quickly looked away, back at my map, probably just caught me staring. Still, it felt like a deliberate act, like she wanted me to see. I shook it off. Just a weird lady in a truck stop. I needed to get moving. I got back on the road, Omaha still the destination. I tried to forget about the woman with the sugar, but it stuck with me. Just the way she looked. I put on some classic rock, something loud, and tried to focus on the highway. My phone buzzed again, the same as before. Notifications popped up, then disappeared before I could read them. Probably just a glitch with the service out here. Rural Nebraska wasn't known for its 5-bar coverage. I picked up a fare about 1 hour outside of Lincoln. Her name was Willa. She was a quiet woman, heading to a small airfield about 30 miles off my planned route. She said she worked as ground crew. No big deal, detours happen, but the address she gave me was the same exit I'd been glancing at on the map back at the diner. The one I'd decided against, that felt wrong. I chalked it up to coincidence. It's a small state. Lots of roads converge. Still, I took the exit anyway. The airfield wasn't much, just a couple of hangars and a long, cracked runway. I dropped Willa off. She barely said 2 words. As I pulled back onto the highway, I noticed something tied to the fence post right by the gate. A red ribbon, exactly like the one that had been tied to my rearview mirror when I stopped for gas 2 days ago. I'd cut it off, figuring it was some kid's prank. I didn't say anything to Willa. I didn't ask her about it. I just drove. I took the next exit, found a motel, and booked a room. I changed my route completely. No more Omaha, I headed south, towards Kansas City. I figured if someone was just messing with me, changing direction would throw them off. I kept checking my mirrors though, and my phone kept buzzing. The motel room smelled like lemon cleaner and regret. I kept the news on, just background noise, but mostly I stared at the door. Every creak of the floorboards in the hallway felt like someone testing the lock. I tried calling Ruben, just to hear a normal voice, but it went straight to voicemail. He's usually glued to his phone. That didn't help. The buzzing hadn't stopped though, still just those blank notifications. No app icon, no sender, just a vibration and an empty space where a message should be. I decided to eat something. There was a diner across the highway. I figured getting out might make me feel less like a trapped animal. As I was walking back to the room, I noticed a pickup truck parked near my door. It was dark blue, an older model. A man was leaning against it, smoking. He didn't look at me, just kept staring out at the highway. I unlocked the door quickly, fumbled with the key, and went inside. I locked it twice. Then the headlights hit the window, another truck. This one pulled up right in front of the motel room, blocking my view of the blue one. 2 men got out. Both were wearing those orange vests, the kind construction workers use. They walked towards my door. My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't hesitate. I went around to the back window, kicked out the screen, and scrambled out. I ran, just ran, towards the fields behind the motel. I could hear them yelling, but I didn't look back. I didn't want to see their faces. I thought maybe this was some kind of scam, a staged robbery, something like that. I kept running until I reached the highway and flagged down a semi. The driver, a woman named Josie, let me climb in. She didn't ask questions, just kept driving. When I finally dared to look back, the motel was gone, and so was the blue pickup. Just the semi and the endless blacktop, but on the passenger side mirror, stuck with a tiny piece of tape, was a red ribbon, just like the one on the airfield fence. Josie dropped me off at the next state trooper post, just past Oakhaven. It was almost dawn, everything gray and washed out. I told them everything about Willa, the airfield, the ribbons, the pickup, even the feeling of being watched. They were polite and professional. A young guy, barely older than me, took my statement. He kept glancing at his partner, a woman with tired eyes, as if he wasn't sure what to make of it all. They went back to the motel. I waited. It felt like hours, but it couldn't have been more than 1 hour. They came back, faces blank. They said the motel owner hadn't seen anything unusual. No blue pickup was registered as a guest. No reports of disturbances were filed. And the airfield? It was officially closed for the season. They did find a piece of red ribbon snagged on a bush near where I'd run into the woods. They bagged it as evidence. "Could be anything," the woman said, handing me a card with a case number. "Kids messing around. It could be a prank." I didn't think it was a prank. Not anymore. I rented a car, a bright yellow compact, figuring it would be harder to follow, and drove straight home. I needed to see my wife, Lena. I needed to feel normal. But when I got to the house, everything was wrong. It wasn't broken into, and it wasn't vandalized. It was just different. A vase was moved. A picture was slightly askew. Lena said she hadn't touched anything. She hadn't expected me home so early. She'd tried calling, but my phone was dead. Then I saw it, tucked into the handle of the kitchen faucet, a tiny splash of red. Another ribbon. I think they wanted me to come home. They let me escape, let me run, just to see if I'd come back here. They were testing me. It wasn't about the airfield or the motel or even me, really. It was about Lena. They want to scare her. It's been years. 7 or 8, perhaps? It feels like a different life, honestly. People ask if I still drive for Rideshare, and I just change the subject. I don't explain. It's not a fear, exactly. More like a deep, ingrained wrongness. It started subtly. After I went to the police, after the ribbon in the kitchen, the requests started coming through the app for pickups far outside the city, places I'd normally avoid, small towns mostly. At first I figured it was just a quirk of the algorithm. Then it became consistent, always late at night, always needing to go through that stretch of highway near the airfield. I started accepting them, thinking, I don't know, maybe I was trying to prove something, that I wasn't scared, that it was all coincidence. Each time the passenger was unremarkable, quiet. They'd give a destination, usually a house a few miles off the interstate, and then nothing, just a drop-off and a rating. But the frequency increased 3 or 4 times a month, always the same route. I convinced myself it was a group of college kids, some kind of scavenger hunt or a dare. They were using the app to orchestrate this elaborate game, and I was unknowingly part of it. It felt contained until the last one. He didn't speak, not a single word, just stared straight ahead, hands clasped tight in his lap. And the destination wasn't a house. It was a storage facility out in the middle of nowhere. An empty bay, number 37. He just got out and walked inside. No explanation, no thank you. I never took another rideshare request. I still drive, but I stick to the interstates. I plan my routes meticulously, avoiding any exit that looks even remotely isolated. And I never, ever stop at antique stores. Not anymore. There's always something displayed, something red.